Have you ever found yourself lying in bed, just trying to fall asleep, and suddenly your brain decides it's the perfect time to replay a super cringy argument from like 5 years ago? Yeah, it is totally exhausting, right? Well, let's dive right into this explainer where we're going to unpack a really compassionate, deeply scientifically grounded pathway to transform that lingering past pain into profound wisdom and resilience. Because let's be real, we all carry some kind of history with us. But today, we're going to look really closely at how we can fundamentally alter our relationship with the exact things that have hurt us the most in the past.
Think about what true, deep peace actually feels like. That sense of absolute tranquility. That's the ultimate destination we are aiming for here. But honestly, getting to that point can feel almost impossible sometimes, doesn't it? And there's a good reason for that. Carrying around this complex, heavy weight of historical conflicts is incredibly draining on your system. It literally takes a massive amount of your subconscious energy just to keep those old wounds managed, pushed down, and suppressed day after day. Processing these emotional hurts is an undeniably challenging journey. There's no way around that. But as you'll see throughout this explainer today, it is the exact work required to unlock some seriously remarkable, life-changing liberation. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1, the weight of the past, 2, the roots of conflict, 3, reframing your inner story, 4, rewiring your thought patterns, 5, repairing and resolving relationships, and finally, 6, embracing your empowered future. Let's jump right into section 1, the weight of the past. So here's the thing about unresolved emotional burdens. They don't just magically fade away with time like we want them to. They actually accumulate. I want you to think of it literally like carrying a heavy backpack around with you everywhere you go. Every single time a conflict goes unaddressed or a hurt gets buried deep down or an apology is left unsaid, you are basically dropping another heavy stone into that backpack. Psychologically speaking, hauling all these stones around directly leads to cognitive distortions. And what does that actually look like in your day-to-day life? Well, it's kind of like wearing glasses with the completely wrong prescription. Suddenly, a totally harmless offhand comment from a friend looks like a deliberate insult. You start to see the entire world around you through this distorted lens of anxiety, mistrust, and self-doubt. And the really wild part about all of this, our brains actually do this on purpose to try and protect us. It's trying to keep us on high alert so we can avoid future pain. But in doing so, it inadvertently traps us in these deeply, deeply painful patterns. And listen, this isn't just all in your head. Staying stuck in those familiar patterns exacts a massive, undeniable biological toll on your body. Let's talk about emotional dysregulation for a second. This happens when your nervous system essentially gets stuck in the on position. It starts treating minor, everyday inconveniences like life or death emergencies. A spilled cup of coffee suddenly feels like a catastrophic, day-ruining failure. But beyond just the emotional outbursts or feeling totally numb, there's a fascinating and honestly somewhat terrifying physiological response happening here. Chronic emotional stress from all these unresolved issues actually burns up an immense amount of physical energy. It can literally inflame your body, manifesting as real physical symptoms like chronic headaches, severe digestive problems, and a critically weakened immune system. Plus, it quietly erodes your deepest sense of self-worth over time. It completely strains your relationships because, understandably, you are terrified of betrayal. And it seriously impedes your personal growth because taking even a small risk just feels way too dangerous when your nervous system is already constantly overloaded. But hey, let's flip that script for a minute. Imagine what emotional freedom actually feels like on, say, a random Tuesday afternoon. It feels like waking up in the morning without that super familiar heavy pit of dread in your stomach. It looks like finally being able to trust a new partner or a new friend because you've consciously stopped projecting all your past traumas onto them. Releasing the resentment that constantly drains your mental energy literally builds a bridge from where you are right now to exactly where you want to be. You actively mitigate those crippling symptoms of anxiety, and in doing so, you create a dramatically more stable emotional foundation for yourself. And it's really important to note, this kind of resolution isn't about just blindly forgetting what happened to you. No way. It is about transforming that pain into deep, actionable understanding so you can finally, truly move forward. Which brings us to section 2, the roots of conflict. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we react the way we do? The absolutely crucial point to understand here is that your reactions are profoundly biological. Conflict very rarely exists just on the surface level. Say a colleague makes a mildly critical comment about your work. You might think, oh, I'm just annoyed. But deep, deep down, your brain perceives a literal threat to your identity, your basic competence, or your overall security. And what happens next is crazy. Your amygdala, which you can think of as this overzealous, totally hyperactive security guard living in your brain, completely takes over.
It hijacks your brain's logic center and plunges you straight into a primal fight or flight response. It is absolutely wild to think that our sophisticated modern brains can react to an unread text message or a slightly passive-aggressive email with the exact same biological intensity as being chased by a saber-toothed tiger in the wild. But that is exactly why we get so intensely, irrationally defensive instead of just having an open, rational discussion about the problem.
Furthermore, we have to realize that our perceptions aren't objective, universal truths. They are basically just pieces of information passed through our own unique personal filters. I like to think of these filters as deeply tinted windows that we don't even realize we're looking through most of the time. This perfectly explains why a really direct communication style might feel highly aggressive and rude to you, but completely normal or even polite and efficient to someone else. Let's look closely at cognitive biases, specifically confirmation bias. If you already have this subconscious, lingering belief that a certain coworker dislikes you, your brain will literally ignore the 3 times they smiled and held the door for you this week. It just filters that out entirely. Instead, it will hyperfixate on the one single time they happen to sigh during your presentation. Developing true empathy and recognizing these varied cultural backgrounds and past experiences is exactly how we start to slowly roll those tinted windows down.
Moving right along to Section 3, reframing your inner story.
Now, this is where we really start to take our power back. Drawing on the incredible principles of neuroplasticity, you can actually physically rewire your brain. Let's break neuroplasticity down for a second. Imagine your brain is a big hill covered in fresh snow. The more you slide down the victim path, constantly asking, why did this happen to me? Why is it always me? The deeper and slicker that icy groove gets, making it incredibly hard to ever take a different route. Reframing your experience is like consciously, deliberately deciding to drag your sled over and carve a brand new path in the fresh snow. And you do this by asking empowering questions. Instead of just endlessly ruminating, ask yourself, okay, what did this experience actually teach me? For example, rather than viewing a really painful breakup as permanent, glaring evidence of your unworthiness, you consciously reframe it. You look at it as a crucial, hard-earned lesson in recognizing red flags and discerning what a healthy relationship actually looks like for you. By identifying this post-traumatic growth, you are actively packing down that fresh, resilient, new path in the snow.
I want you to listen to this incredibly profound quote. The past is a place of reference, not residence. Just take a second to really, really think about that. How much of your daily, precious mental energy is spent decorating a house you don't even live in anymore? You absolutely cannot change what happened in the past. That's a given. But you have absolute total control over whether you choose to live inside those old wounds today.
So to effectively pack up and move out of that old residence, you must shift your mental energy forward. Backward rumination just reinforces all those negative emotional states we talked about earlier. Instead, you need to clearly and vividly define what you want your future to look like, and then set actionable growth intentions. Rather than sitting around thinking, they never should have done that to me, shift it. Tell yourself, I intend to communicate my boundaries much more clearly going forward. And here is a totally fascinating piece of neuroscience. To your brain, vividly visualizing an action fires many of the exact same neural networks as actually doing the thing in real life. How crazy is that? So practicing visualization isn't just some fluffy, wishful thinking. It is literally a scientifically proven dress rehearsal for your new life, beautifully priming your brain to make those positive behavioral shifts an actual reality.
Let's move over to Section 4, rewiring your thought patterns.
I want you to really listen to the difference between these two internal voices. The old pattern whispers, and it's so anchored in absolute helplessness. It says, I was wronged and they need to pay. I just can't let it go. But the new pattern completely reclaims your power. It says, I acknowledge the pain, but I choose to focus my energy on learning and creating a life free from resentment. Now notice something really important here. The new pattern absolutely does not deny the pain. That is a really, really vital distinction. We aren't pretending it didn't hurt, but it deliberately reclaims your energy so you can focus on creating the life you actually want to live instead of staying stuck in the past. So how do we actually make that monumental shift in real time, like during a busy Tuesday? First, you have to catch your physical triggers. Think about the classic cognitive behavioral therapy triangle. It's the idea that your thoughts create your feelings, which then completely dictate your behaviors. When your heart suddenly starts racing out of nowhere or you feel your jaw totally clenching up, that is your body's physical trigger telling you that you're sliding right back into a resentment loop. You have to catch it in the moment, take a breath, pause, and actively challenge the thought. Ask yourself, wait, is this absolute belief actually true? Or is it just super familiar to me? Finally, practice a mindful alternative. You might try a loving kindness meditation where you actually try to extend well-being even to those who hurt you. Look, I know it sounds incredibly hard, almost impossible at first, but doing this creates a vital mental pause, which over time literally starves those old, deep neural pathways of suffering and simultaneously strengthens the brand new ones.
All right, section 5, repairing and resolving relationships.
Okay, now we look outward to see how we can safely address the interpersonal conflicts that anchor us to the past. This strategy is heavily inspired by the teachings of the Order of Interbeing. This is a mindfulness community founded by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, and it focuses deeply on our profound interconnectedness as human beings. The entire goal here is genuine understanding, not hurling accusations. And a huge part of this is using I messages. Let's look at an everyday example. Saying to someone, "You always ignore me," instantly triggers the other person's amygdala, right? It causes instant defensiveness. But shifting that just slightly to say, "I feel lonely when we don't talk much," completely changes the entire trajectory of the conversation. It invites empathy. It invites curiosity. However, I need to add a massive caveat right here. If a relationship is toxic or in any way abusive, your physical and emotional well-being must come first. You have to prioritize your safety and your boundaries above absolutely all else.
Navigating these psychologically safe conversations requires a really clear framework. First, you have to prepare thoughtfully. Use your emotional regulation strategies before you even start talking, so you arrive calm and centered, not emotionally charged and ready for a fight. Second, practice active listening without judgment. You've got to really pay attention to their nonverbal cues. Third, avoid character attacks at all costs. Focus entirely on the specific behaviors and how they impacted you. And finally, resolve outstanding issues by truly accepting what is actually possible. Honestly, this is often the biggest psychological hurdle for people. You might have to face the incredibly bitter, painful realization that you may never, ever get the heartfelt, sincere apology that you so rightly deserve. But ultimately, you must accept that your healing is an inside job. It is an internal process. It depends entirely on your willingness to address the issue constructively, and absolutely not on their ability to give you some perfect movie script response.
And finally, we arrive at section 6, embracing your empowered future.
True resolution is an ongoing, deeply layered process. It happens in cycles. It's definitely not an overnight fix. But remember that massive, heavy backpack of stones we talked about at the very beginning? This is exactly what it feels like to finally shrug it off your shoulders. As you constructively resolve these internal and external conflicts, you simply stop carrying the heavy, suffocating weight of the past. And the rewards for doing this work are just profound. Every single time you practice this, you are actively building your emotional muscles. You get to restore trust in yourself and your own judgment, which is the exact secret sauce that allows you to build incredibly healthy, vibrant relationships moving forward. Breaking free from these past burdens creates the vital, expansive space you need for authentic self-expression, finally bringing your daily life into a deeply resilient, beautiful state of inner harmony and growth.
Because at the end of the day, healing isn't about erasing the past. That's impossible. It's about stripping the past of its power to control your present. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final vital thought to hopefully spark your continued journey. Are you ready to use the past as a place of reference rather than your residence? Will you let the unchangeable past dictate your reality, or will you choose the path of emotional freedom today? The choice is entirely yours.